Welcome one, welcome all. A 10-game NFL slate awaits us after we have our last round of buys here as well, with 6 teams on a bye week in the NFL this time out. So it's our last 10-game slate. Well, we might have some funky stuff around Christmas time, but as always, I'm joined by Snyder and Drew. Snyder, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Conference championship for college football. We got a nice UFC deal going as well, and nice 10-game slate on tap as well. So a lot of stuff going on the big weekend.
Yeah, you guys are both, big golf fans and stuff. I looked at a sportsbook app and I saw the Hero World Championship. Is that already kicked off? Is that a final round tomorrow, Drew?
Scotty and JT are up top. Yeah.
Ooh. JT's found his form.
Yeah, he had a kid and figured it out.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes to fix your golf game.
Either that or get married. I don't know. One or the other.
I'll let my fiance know. I said, if you want to get my handicap down from 20, maybe we can get it down to 15. It just takes one kid, huh?
That's right. Pop them out.
It's good to know. Good to know. I will waste no time, though. We got 10 games to talk about here. We're going to try and keep it around 5 minutes a game. First up, we get an AFC North rivalry. The Cleveland Browns taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're wondering who is chalked in this game, well, it's Najee Harris. It's Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. All three of these guys are projected for double-digit ownership. Now, when you look at what the Steelers did last week, Snyder, I'm going to start with you. I almost want to just give him the Bengals tax. Like the Bengals defense can make any offense look good, but they sure did make Najee Harris look amazing last week. Also, in the Browns side of the ball, going into Pittsburgh is not easy at all. I'm aware from, 2 weeks ago when they played each other, the home team has won two or three of the last years, just consecutively. It's always the home team that wins. With Pittsburgh being at home here, I don't know if I like targeting this Browns offense. What do you think, Snyder?
Yeah, we saw last week on the Cleveland side there, as Tillman was out, and Jeudy and Moore saw a ton of volume there. Jerry Jeudy with the revenge game just goes full nuclear on those guys. 13 targets, 9 catches, 235 yards, and that longer touchdown. I think the majority of people are going to go with the Jeudy side, and if I was just going to only had to pick one, I think I'm going to go with the lower price Elijah Moore. Pretty much the same workload there. I mean, he had 14 targets, caught 8 for 111 yards. Just was missing that 70-yard touchdown that Jerry Jeudy came down with. So I still like Elijah Moore's role in this offense. I mean, he's seeing 8+ targets in 4 of the last 5 games, 14 last week. The target share is definitely going to continue to be there for him. So I think I lean more over Jeudy if I had to make that 1-to-1 deal. But I think you can play both of them for sure. If you're going to play like Jameis, you can play that double if you want for sure. The price tag on Jameis is still relatively cheap there at $5,400. There's another cheaper 5K quarterback that'll be more popular, I think, later on as we get into the slate. But definitely I think the Browns will be passing there. They're scheduled to be behind in this game, a 6.5-point underdog. Decent total. I mean, there's really isn't any huge totals this week at all. I mean, 43.5 is about right up there near the top. I mean, you see a bunch of totals in that 43 to 45 range this week. So nothing crazy like we saw on Thursday, which was one of the better games I saw. But on the Pittsburgh side, I don't really like too much here. I'm not going to play Najee. I think there's some way better options to play than Najee against the Browns. Maybe even lean the Browns as like a punt defense that'll be contrarian as well. I kind of like the Browns side of this game.
Yeah, when you look at the Browns side of the ball, I mean, obviously there was 6-7-point underdogs here going into Pittsburgh and stuff. Drew, this Browns offense with Jameis under center, and it's the same thing as last year when Flacco took over. This offense just comes to life. And for some reason, despite being in mediocre matchups or even tougher matchups, like Denver last week, you have Steelers a couple weeks ago, even in a blizzard, these guys are getting it. And it's kind of a paradox for me because I don't want to touch them, but I have to respect of what they are doing. Is Jerry Jeudy him now? Or was Steve Smith really wrong about Jerry Jeudy? What are you doing with these Browns here, Drew?
I don't know if he's him, but I will say, the volume is there for, ceilings we're talking about for milli makers. The Cleveland stack looks pretty good. I'll still side over Jeudy over Moore. I mean, outside of last week, Moore, has been under 10 targets. So it's still up there, which is a great value at 4,800. But I think Judy with Jameis Winston makes a ton of sense. I got a lot of stacks of Cleveland. So Jameis chucking it almost 60 times last week. Every game this week he's been around 45 attempts. So like, yeah, there's a lot of upside for the Browns side. I don't have a ton of love on the Pittsburgh side. I do have some Najee Harris. I'm not going to completely fade that angle. But yeah, the Cleveland side, as far as I'm looking at for Billy Makers tomorrow, I got a pretty healthy amount of stacks for Cleveland.
Yeah, and it's just all about volume in a sense. And you know who exactly is going to get the ball for Cleveland. And I'm with you guys. Like, look, the Pittsburgh side of the ball, it's a little bit gross, right? Like Najee Harris is kind of the bell cow. You know, you still got Jalen Warren kind of lurking just a bit. But unless you're willing to pay $6,800 for George Pickens, I mean, your list kind of runs short there. And who are you really going to stack Russell Wilson with? I mean, the week to play the Steelers was last week. Let's be honest here. And I know they have a healthy team total this week. Najee's not a terrible play. But it's one where I think you can suffice with or without. I mean, 6K, he's fine as like a last piece in, but it's not going to be someone that I'm going to go out of my way for. And you're just right about the Browns. Volume and just a very, very tight target tree is all that matters. And look, we saw it 2 weeks ago in the snow game. You still had these receivers get there. It's probably going to be much better conditions in Pittsburgh, I would assume, than what they just had in Cleveland. I think, yeah, I'm with you guys hand in hand there. Nick Chubb, 5,900 is probably not the greatest click in the world, but he did look good last time against the Steelers. It just seems to be the passing game, though, because it's so easy to get a double stack. It's so easy to potentially see 40 to 50 throws from this Browns team. I am with you there. Drew, anything else you wanted to add before I moved us on to Atlanta, Minnesota?
Nope. Come on, Jameis.
Perfect. All right. ATL, Minnesota. This is a different game. I just have a tough time trying to figure out exactly what Minnesota wants to do. I've been on TJ Hawkinson 2 weeks ago. He was great. Last week, he was very, very mediocre, and it was tilting to watch Johnny Munt catch the touchdown. And then it just feels like you don't know who is going to go off for this Minnesota offense, right? Justin Jefferson has been consistent, but he hasn't really shown that upside. Darnold has been fine. Aaron Jones has been the bell cow, but even then he's battled a little bit of injuries. Oh, my goodness. And then we also have to look at the Atlanta Falcons side of the ball. Drake London is the guy. Darnell Mooney was a little bit of an afterthought last week, and it was Ray McLeod who actually ended up having a big game. And then one last mention for Bijan, who had one of his better games last week, cracking 100 yards with a touchdown, as well as being involved in the pass game. Drew, what are you doing with this one here?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Even though the total looks pretty appealing, I'm not too high on this game as a whole. I got some Aaron Jones and I got some Minnesota defense, but like the mix of the other offensive pieces, I don't have a ton of exposure to at the moment. Hawkinson looks fine at 4,300. I think that's a nice filler for tight end. Atlanta, I really don't have any interest, to be honest, of Atlanta. But I mean, the Minnesota side makes sense. 26.5, point spread for the team total. It makes a lot of sense. But I will say, like, I think I'm probably going to lean on, a few Aaron Jones with some Minnesota defense. The defense actually has been really good. I mean, they've been having like 1 to 3 sacks or 1 to 3 interceptions per game and, 3 or 4 sacks a game. So the Minnesota going against Atlanta, I think I'm probably going to be pretty high on the defense of all things to talk about on this show. But yeah, honestly, guys, for this team total, I'm not too interested in this game as a whole. It'll probably be, a lower exposure. I'll probably have some, but it's not going to be a target for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, Snyder. Do you have the same thoughts? Because these guys, I mean, Drake London's a fine price, Aaron Jones fine price, 6,400, 6,500. But I mean, it's just really tough to double stack in this one, right?
Yeah, for sure. I was talking to DC earlier today, and he's like, if there's one thing you're going to do this week, make sure to play the Vikings defense. He's like, they know Kirk Cousins' weakness in and out, and Kirk Cousins has been struggling the last few games, 4 interceptions thrown, including the 4 last game, and he's been sacked multiple times almost every game this year as well. So I think this is just going to be a great spot for the Vikings to kind of tee off on him in this spot. Pretty big favorites here at home. That home stadium is going to be rocking. Cousins struggles at times as well. So I think I was actually expecting the Vikings defense to be priced up closer to the 4K when I originally seen the pricings come out, because they've been priced at 3,700 at least a couple of times this year, and now they're getting 34. I feel like it's a pretty good discount too for that. So really like the Vikings defense, and I think you can even pair it with Aaron Jones if you want to. Minnesota's got the 11th best offensive line going against the 30th worst defensive line for the Falcons. So I think there's a decent advantage there for Jones, and he should be really low owned on this slate. I know he's having some troubles fumbling, but if he can kind of get going early, I think they'll kind of go and put some more usage under his belt after he only had the 5 carries last week. But as long as he can avoid the turnovers, I think he's in a decent spot here. But don't really like much in the passing games here. I haven't been playing Justin Jefferson at all. The price tag's under $8K now. The ceiling's there under that price tag. I mean, it's such a good price tag for him, but I just haven't played him yet this year. And I don't think I'll be going to him this game either. Mainly just the Vikings defense with maybe some Aaron Jones in tournaments.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this too. And look, I've loved targeting this Minnesota defense a little bit just because we know it's a pass funnel, right? Like, I'm not interested in Bijan very much, but I think Drake London's a good click. I think Darnell Mooney is fine for tournaments as well because we know the upside. But I'm with you guys. Like, I think there's even a world where you could play like a Falcon wide receiver with the Vikings defense. And I really like that shout that, you said you were talking with DC and, yourself comes here on the show, like 3,400 for this Vikings defense. Kirk Cousins has not been that great. I mean, let's just be honest here. They have not been that great. And ultimately, he looks like, I don't know. Like, I know we had the same concerns early on in the season and stuff. And he ultimately, looked all right against the Eagles and kind of bounced back. However, he just doesn't look like he's able to step up and make plays. And ultimately, if you're able to get pressure, if you're able to jump the route, kind of like that call. I was honestly checking if we could get a anytime touchdown bet on the defense. I wonder what the odds on that are, because I can just see them jumping a short route and just taking one back the distance because he has been prone to mistakes this season. Let's see, Snyder. I get plus 425 and plus 2,500 for first touchdown. Not bad. That is a shout there. So I'm with you. Vikings defense, maybe an Atlanta wide receiver, and then
I guess looking at ownership, it looks like Darnold's going to be one of the most popular guys. Him and another guy are popping in the cash teams, it looks like.
Yeah, 12% according to Saber, and that does make a lot of sense, doesn't it? And just 6,100, it's price thing, right? You can get Hawkinson and Jefferson with them, but I think my thing with Addison too, he's boomer bust. I mean, that's fine in the millie, but ultimately it's just the floor is just shaky on really any of these guys. Like Jefferson, it takes him a half to even get the ball sometimes. Like he will have 90 yards and a half, and you have no guarantee that he'll even see 100 after that. So I don't know. I think I'll let other people play the Vikings a little bit, and maybe hopefully this one's a low-scoring game. I know it's a dome. I know it's in December, but ultimately I'm not loving this one here. All right, Saints, Giants. So I loved Taysom Hill last week, and well, the season's over. So we got to find someone else to talk about here on the Saints. And well, who else can I start with other than Alvin Kamara, projected to be very heavy chalk here, Snyder? I love Kamara without Taysom. I mean, the biggest thing against Kamara was always the fact that Taysom could be a threat around the goal line. Now you really don't have that here. Juwan Johnson also going to make a little bit of sense at 3,400 now being the main tight end along with Foster Moreau. This is a game where I don't know. I don't know what to think, right? Like Tyron Tracy got the goal line touchdown on Thanksgiving. He was fine. Otherwise, he's been kind of hit or miss with the ball security issues. Malik Neighbors isn't the worst, 6,900. I mean, Drew Lock did look his way often. Snyder, it's not the greatest game. I mean, to me, first glance, it's like the defenses plus Alvin Kamara would probably be the biggest interest. You like Kevin Austin a little bit last week. Is that kind of maintained here?
Yeah, in this game, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with Kamara yet. I'm seeing him. He's going to come in like legitimately like 35 to 60% owned, depending on what contest you're playing this week. I mean, they're projecting him across the industry anywhere from like 13.5 all the way up to like 26 I've seen. So he's definitely going to hit in all the optimizers and stuff. Definitely the cash play. I'm kind of worried a little bit. I know the total is low, and I looked at the weather, and the weather is actually going to be really nice for New York this time of the year. So it's going to be like 50 degrees there, a little bit of wind, but I know Kamara can just feed off of these little dump-offs and such. But at that ownership, I kind of like another running back later on that we'll get into with, I think, even a better script than Kamara here. I kind of feel like this game could be a slog. It's a 41-point total. So I'm just not really sold 100% on Kamara. Like if I'm playing cash, he's definitely the first click I'm putting in there for sure. And Kevin Austin was fine last week. He caught all 3 of his targets, scored 7 points. Really, it's not going to get you to the winner's circle, but for 3,300, maybe he catches 5 or something this week or something, gets a little extra usage without Taysom Hill in there. So I think Kevin Austin is still fine for like the million makers. If he can somehow break off one to the house or something, he'll probably be 1% owned again this week. So I think he's interesting for like the million maker and whatnot, but not too crazy on him. And then Wandell, you could probably play, but I'm kind of off this game as a whole. I think there's just much better spots. So I think this game's kind of going to be a slog. But, yeah, you see Juwan Johnson there at 3,400. I think he's going to be a guy some people go to this week at the tight end spot. But I don't know. What are you guys doing with Kamara? Are you going to try and get overweight on him or field him? Or such a high ownership I feel like he's coming in at.
I think I'm going to try and get over on him a little bit just because, look, I know we're going to be very high on like Charbonnet a little bit later on, right? With Kenneth Walker out. It's like worth noting that you're going to have a running back position there. You're also going to have Garendo at 5,400. And it kind of leaves you for a natural stud running back, right? Like you can choose between Saquon or you can choose between Alvin Kamara, right? And you're going to have plenty of salary. And I think you can even throw in guys like Bijan a little bit. Braylon Allen we haven't talked about. Like, maybe the more I'm talking it, Snyder, maybe the more I'm talking about it, you could just triple spend down Charbonnet, Garendo, Braylon Allen, and have 3 great running backs still. So I don't know. Drew, what are you doing with Kamara this week?
Yeah, I'll probably make sure between him and Saquon. Saquon he's got $1,000 discount to Saquon. So I'm probably gonna be overweight on both. You can't play them together. It's really, really tough. So I'll probably be overweight on Kamara. And honestly, that's probably the gist of this game analysis for me. Is probably just going to be Kamara and sit out the rest. I'm not going to play, even the cheap guys. I don't even see myself punting some of the cheap guys, to be honest. At least so far in my first few runs, I've gotten a few like Kevin Austin and Juwan Johnson, but that's pretty much it. So yeah, I'm just going to side with Snyder. I don't think this game's going to be super appealing for fantasy. It's going to be Kamara looking for raw points, get 2 or 3 touchdowns. And it's going to be between him and Saquon. Like I do feel like you're going to need one of those two to hit the nuts tomorrow. You're going to want to spend up for a good running back tomorrow.
Yeah, and you do have Saquon, who is getting that Carolina matchup that Bucky Irving ran wild on, as well as Rachaad White getting the long run in overtime as well. So I'm kind of coming around to you guys a little bit here. I think I'm going to be a little bit lighter on Kamara. The more I look at it, more with these value running backs, and I'm sorry, but I am like slightly distracted just staring at this Nikola Jokic performance here. He might drop 60 real points here with a triple-double. It might be in the cards. It's unreal. But yes, I'm with you guys. Let's move on to real quick. Any Tracy? Tracy's not really going to make the cut because we still have a bunch of running backs we haven't talked about who are going to get like just amazing work. And honestly, their team totals are even just a bit better. But just speaking of one of these guys, it's Braylon Allen. And Drew, I'm going to start with you here. With no Breece Hall this week, you're kind of left with a dream that we haven't really had since college. Braylon Allen getting all the carries. And he didn't even have that his last season at Wisconsin here. We know the talent that he has. He has been utilized in the past game a bit for this Jets team, and he should be the main workhorse tomorrow. Very curious to see how he does. And if you look at some of the other guys as well, he's the only guy projecting for real chalk on the New York Jets side of the ball. If you flip over to the Dolphins side of the ball, no one really projecting for double-digit ownership. What are you doing with this one here, Drew?
Yeah, I'll probably just be matching the field. Like, assuming Braylon Allen comes in around 15%, I'll probably just match the field. It's just an unknown, and against Miami, I'm not really sure if they're going to be able to rely on him. They might just have to start slinging it. So, I've been stacking the Jets up too much this year, or at least the last couple weeks. It's been very easy to stack up Rodgers with Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. Last week, I think Wilson had 0 points through the first half and might even been through the third quarter. So I'm not going to do that this week. I'll be sitting out on some of the on all the Jet stacks, but I will have a few one-offs. Like Devontae Adams is still very cheap. Garrett Wilson's up there $100 cheaper than Devontae Adams, who's kind of expensive. But like I think Devontae Adams, he's had the ceilings in the past, and honestly they've kind of gotten screwed the last couple of weeks with Devontae Adams with a few penalties. So I think Devontae Adams is probably the one receiver from the Jets that I'm going to go to. Like I said, I'll play Braylon Allen. He's a fantastic value at 5K, but he's not in a spot where I would be willing to go overweight or jam him in. It's kind of the Jets suck at the moment. So that's kind of my stance. In Miami, I don't know, man. I don't know if Miami if Sabre just has their ownership that low. I feel like there's got to be some more ownership going to like A-Chain. Tyreek Hill's still pretty cheap for a total that's 26 points. So as of now, I'm going to have a few stacks in Miami, but nothing crazy. But I am curious to see if that ownership holds true. I might up the exposure on Miami side, and hopefully we have a Waddle Tyreek Hill game.
Yeah, it is worth noting that Sauce Gardner won't be available for this one, it looks here, against the Dolphins, which obviously hurts this passing defense just a bit. And it's already been very mediocre over the last few weeks, or just last 2 months, I should even say. And this is one of those things, Snyder, where it's been decent to go against the Jets a little bit. I mean, a few weeks ago, you saw what the Colts did with Anthony Richardson. You kind of have a spot here where the Dolphins, fully healthy, needing to win out to even have a chance really to make the playoffs. Is this a game where maybe you can join Drew and get a little bit sneaky with these Dolphin stacks?
Yeah, I think I was just talking about Kamara. I think this is the best spot on the board this week from a tournament standpoint. Is you want to target this Jets team on the ground, and you're going to get a chain potentially 10 times less owned than Kamara. And we've got really good weather here. It's going to be like 80 degrees and no wind here. I think the Jets have kind of melded in this year as well. So I think Devin DeChain's just going to break the slate and outscore Kamara and potentially Barkley. 8,200 is 200 more than Kamara. So I think you're going to get a chain like 4%, 3% owned in some of these really small single entries and stuff. So I think Devin DeChain is the million maker winner that we need to look at a little bit this week. I just don't think that like Kamara is like 7 times more likely to outscore a chain when a chain's been outscoring him all season long. So he's got realistically, I think, close to like a 15-point floor. The upside for him, he's hit 20 plus points in 5 of the last 6 games. I think he's almost got a 20-point floor in like a matchup like this at home, like a touchdown favorite at home against a poor run defense. And I look for Miami to roll here. They're still trying to make the playoffs. I think the Jets have kind of mailed in their season. So I'm going to be overweight considerably on Devin DeChain. I think he's the best play on the board from a tournament standpoint this week. So I'm high on a chain, and I think you can even play the Dolphins defense if you want to go there. 3,200, they're not going to be that owned. And if New York is kind of melded in, and we saw Miami put up double-digit points against New England earlier this year, but I like the Vikings defense much more than Miami defense, but I think a chain's the best play on the board from a tournament standpoint this week.
I like that call there, Snyder. I mean, we have been attacking the Jets' run defense all season. That has definitely been one of their biggest weaknesses, and we know what the Dolphins can do. We know the upside of A-Chain. We saw it last year and in certain spots, and we've also seen it this year, especially when Tua is healthy. I like that call a lot. I don't have anything else to add there. I mean, I think I just want to mention on Jonnu is I think they are just finding ways to get him the ball, and it should be noted that he is probably one of the best DFS tight ends that we have left remaining. I said that about Taysom Hill last week, and he tore his knee up, so let's hope that Jonnu does a little bit better than Taysom here. But I just like week in and week out, Jonnu keeps going over his props, absolutely smashing the slate, and even in garbage time or just throughout the course of a game where he's even a target in the red zone. Jonnu Smith is someone that I really want to keep getting exposure to at 5,300. It might seem like a tall tag, but I mean what he is doing, what they're able to get the ball to him in dangerous areas too is very noteworthy as well. All right, Jaguars Titans AFC South matchup here. The Titans defense is projected for mega chalk. You also have Tony Pollard as well, who is a good click there at 6,400. Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, and Brian Thomas round out the double-digit ownership. Snyder, this isn't the most thrilling game, but it has a lot of pieces here that maybe you can do one-offs or even a running back defense stack, right, with Pollard and the Titans defense. Yeah,
when salary first came out, I think it was Monday, I put in the Discord, we had Bryce Young last week, and this week it was going to be Will Levis. And now it kind of is turned out – I think Will Levis is going to be quite popular now. It's kind of the weeks going on, which is kind of hurtful to see, but I still like some Will Levis. The 5K price tag, he played horrible last week. I thought he was one of his worst games I've ever seen, and he still put up 16 DK points. And he gets a softer matchup here at home against a really bad Jacksonville defense, where you can do whatever you want with this defense. Basically, you can throw on them, you can run on them. So I think Will Levis to Calvin Ridley. I think we could see another one of those Ridley 20+ point DK point games here. So I like Ridley to Levis to Ridley in this spot. Ridley still seeing the targets and such. He just hasn't had that volume since a couple of weeks ago when he had I think two of those 3 week stretch. He had 25+ points in those games. And Brian Thomas was the guy I played last week, so that would be the guy I would look to run it back with there. Looked finally fully healthy last week, kind of 10 targets, got a touchdown there, 75 yards, only caught 4 passes, but the upside, Brian Thomas holds for under 6K. You could get the Levis Ridley Thomas stack for under 18K. I think it's like 17, mid 17s for that stack. But it's even cheaper than that. It's like 17.2, I think. But I like that. And Chig's in there, 3K. I think he's going to get a little bit of ownership potentially. Actually, no, he had 6 targets last week, but I don't think he's going to actually see much ownership. So you can throw him in there if you want. Ingram was a guy I sprinkled in some teams last week. Didn't really work out that well, but I think you could look at like a Parker Washington too. But mainly for me, I'm still going to play the Levis stacks. I like him and Ridley bringing it back with Brian Thomas.
Yeah, this is a good comment too. Good. Talking about the Westbrook Akine chalk finally happening. Oh my gosh! If he houses another touchdown, I'm going to be just gone. JSU has been on it all the time apparently too, which is just crazy. The run he has been on. Chig, sneaky play. You mentioned that, Snyder too. That was a good point. And this is an interesting game just purely because it looks gross on paper, Drew, but obviously you had Snyder talking it up just a little bit. Brian Thomas was missed a couple times deep last week.
Yeah.
Is there – yeah, what? And that's the thing. It's like we know he's the most talented player on the Jacksonville offense. You know, I know Trevor Lawrence is out for the year, but Mac Jones was able to get him the ball. I mean, is that someone that you're going to be a primary focus on for you, Drew?
Yeah, Brian Thomas, not Mac Jones.
Yes.
honestly, I think everything that Snyder said is basically reading off my notes. I have a lot of run backs. I got Brian Thomas with Ridley running it back. I have Ridley and Will Levis with Brian Thomas running it back. I got a few with Evan Ingram as a third for Jacksonville in that stack. So this game total doesn't look appealing, but for fantasy, Brian Thomas has a lot of upside. Calvin Ridley has a lot of upside, assuming Westbrook doesn't snipe all his catches or all his TD equity. So I think Snyder said it really, really well. I like this game a lot. I'm going to stack up Tennessee a good bit. And honestly, almost every single stack has a run back. There's a few exceptions, but so I like this game environment. So yeah, I like Tennessee running it back with a lot of Brian Thomas and Brian Thomas running it back with Ridley. I don't even have to have stacks with Levis. Like honestly, I think Thomas, it's Ridley's cheap enough and Brian Thomas is cheap enough for the ceilings. I can play him, running it back as like a substack without a QB even.
Oh, I like it. Now, this is what nightmares consist of for me. 2 for 120 and 2 times. That was a 91-yard touchdown he had, or whatever it was, 97 yards. Yeah, that one had me tilted a little bit. But yeah, should be a fun one to just track. I'm kind of with you guys here. I like what you guys talked me in and talked it up on a little bit. Pollard, obviously I'll be the chalk donkey here. I do like the Pollard and Titan stacks a little bit, but if I am going to branch off there, I like what you guys said. And this is like another thing too, like Pollard plus like Brian Thomas. It's not the worst thing in the world either. So interested in that game there. Let's go to a rematch of a Super Bowl that happened in the early 2000s. I can't tell you which one it was or what year. I'm going to guess 2002. Wait, no, that was a Patriots year. 2003 or 2004. The Raiders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Was that 01? Someone correct me there. The Raiders and the Buccaneers here. Jacoby Myers has been incredible. Brock Bowers has been incredible. And the Raiders, honestly, they should have beat Kansas City. I'm still tilted that they didn't actually get the job done there. This is a fun game purely because when we look at the Raiders side of the ball, they have been very effective. I mean, they just have. They have a very tight target tree. You got Myers and Bowers, who have both been very fantasy relevant this year. You have a clear pass funnel as well. You know they're going to be wanting to throw the ball here against this Bucs team. Then on the Bucs side of the ball, Bucky Irving, questionable. So that will kind of bring into play guys like Rachaad White and Sean Tucker, but also the return of Mike Evans, who looked great last week as well and helped the Bucs get the win. Drew, what are you doing with the Raiders and the Bucs?
Yeah, I'm not going to have a ton of exposure to this game. I think there's certainly a spot where some stacks of this game make a lot of sense because the ceilings are certainly there for the Tampa Bay side. Mike Evans with Baker Mayfield with Cade Otton. Cade Otton's still pretty cheap as kind of like a third or a second or third receiving option. So Jacoby Myers makes a lot of sense at 5,600. He's a fantastic one-off. I probably won't do any stacks of Las Vegas, but and then Brock Bowers had a fantastic game last week, bouncing back. So I think Brock Bowers, if you have the salary, I won't, but he's a fantastic spin up for tight end. I mean, a guy can get 20 points, and that's rare to see so far this year for tight ends. I mean, Kelsey's been terrible. There's been a couple other options, but nothing for that type of ceiling. You just got to pay a price for it. So yeah, I like the Tampa Bay side. I probably won't bite into the cheaper options on Tampa Bay. I'm just going to focus on Evans and Cade Otton. And then, for whatever stacks I get, I'll have a few shares of Baker Mayfield. And then Jacoby Myers is a one-off, no Las Vegas stacks.
I like it. Yeah, the one-offs there being the key word there. You're not going to play Aiden O'Connell with them. I wish I don't blame you at all. Aiden O'Connell will not run the ball either at all. Snyder, I look at this game too, and I'm kind of with Drew. I mean, almost completely here. Bowers and Myers have both been great, but obviously on the Tampa Bay side of the ball, you have this Bucky Irving news. Let's just paint a picture here, all right? Because I know you'll have your updated thoughts in the morning. You also have your core up on the site as well. But I want to throw a wrench here. Bucky Irving, is he projected to be in or out, by the way? Before I do this thought exercise here, let me just go ahead and make sure there hasn't been news on him, because I think the last I saw was we would find out a little bit later. Let me just pull this up. Expected to play. Thank God I didn't do this thought exercise. All right, never mind. It was going to be, what if Bucky Irving is out? So he is expected to play here. What are you doing with this game here, Snyder?
Yeah, I was interested in that Bucky Irving news there. I think he's going to get kind of squeezed with all these other cheaper running backs and the guys up top. So I think Bucky is fine for tournaments. I like targeting this Vegas defense. I think I was looking at there was a couple of teams I made early, which was like Titan stacks with like secondary correlations with this game with like Bucky and Cade Otton. I actually like Cade Otton a little bit more than Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is going to get steamed up a little bit, but I've just been targeting tight ends against this Raiders defense as of late, and I think this is another one of those spots where we could see Cade Otton kind of pop for maybe another one of those 20 spots, like he had that 3-game stretch a few weeks ago where he went for 20 plus 3 games in a row. And so I like targeting tight ends against this Las Vegas defense. Last week we saw 23 from the Chiefs, 37 from Miami, 49 from Cincinnati, 30 from the Kansas City a week before. So that's 20 plus points to the position for the last 5 weeks. And they really didn't play any tight ends before that, like the Steelers and the Rams and the Broncos and the Browns. So I wasn't really taking that much in consideration. But some of these better tight ends or teams that use the tight ends more have really done well against this Raiders team. So I like Cade Otton for tournaments. I don't think he's going to see any ownership at all. I think you can play Evans, though. Sure, he's going to pop in all the models. He'll probably be like the guy people look to potentially in cash games and such. And then on the Raiders side, I was looking at Brock Bowers again. I mean, you're basically getting a receiver with Brock Bowers there. You can put him in the flex and run 2 tight end sets with him. You can even run a Bowers-Otton team I was looking at with both the tight ends in there. So Bowers and then Jacoby Myers is another guy. I've just been playing Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers often the last 4 or 5 weeks. So Jacoby Myers will still be in the pool for me for sure.
Yeah, and I think this is a good point here too, right? Richie Smalls mentions it. 2 spend up tight ends, if you're playing 2 cheap running back stuff. But like if you're going to go away from the chalk, running back, right? In terms of, let me just put it this way: no Saquon or Kamara in your lineup, right? You're already getting really bold there, right? You're already fading 2 of the most chalk stud pieces, especially at the running back position here. But if you did do that, it would allow you to get the Brock Bowers. So, Drew, you mentioned it, like you don't have the salary to get up to Brock Bowers. Probably means, well, what you said earlier is in line, right? You need one of Barkley or Kamara. If you didn't, well, that probably means you have enough space for Bowers here. And I think I want to get over on him. And I don't know where this value is going to come from because I'm kind of with you. It is going to be very tough in this next game when we talk about Saquon Barkley of like how do you fade him in this spot, right? Like, and we're going to talk about that. We already talked about Kamara a little bit too, and we really haven't talked about cheap receivers. So it kind of just comes into the point where a lot of people are going to have the same build. 2 cheap running backs. I think this was mentioned earlier. 2 cheap running backs, right? Kind of 4.8, 5.4 range, right? You'll have Garendo, you'll have Charbonnet, and then you'll have Saquon. That doesn't make sense. Like, that doesn't mean that Bowers is a bad play. It does mean though that he will come in very low owned because a lot of people just won't have that salary for him, and that's how you would kind of buck the trend there. All right, let's go ahead and talk about Saquon then. Snyder, we're bringing up the Eagles here. The Eagles defense has been great. I think they're playing the best football in the NFL right now, and that includes the Lions. The Lions defense can be exposed a little bit. The Eagles have really not shown a weakness in any way over the last couple of months. Saquon being the main guy too, 9K. It's a lot, but at the same time, we just saw Bucky and Rashad run absolutely wild against this Carolina defense. Now you have one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL going against them. This Eagles defense is great as well. I mean, 3,700. You mentioned the Vikings defense there at 3,400. The Eagles defense does belong in this conversation. We praised Bryce Young last week, which was a first. I haven't praised him at all in his career, and we did praise him last week. And you know what? He looked great last week against the Bucs. You know, he let him down on a game-tying drive, let him down into field goal range as well before Chuba Hubbard ended up fumbling. However, going on the road against the Eagles here, I have my doubts. Eagles by double digits. What do you see, Snyder?
Yeah. I mean, if there ever was like a potential letdown spot, I think this would be it for the Eagles coming off a couple big back-to-back road wins, coming off that big win at Baltimore last week, one at the Rams the week before, had a couple of another wins before that, 13.5-point spread. You got Saquon against he's got the absolute best offensive line going against the absolute worst defensive line here. So just the absolute nut spot for Saquon here. It's kind of like that Cam Scatterbo spot earlier today from like the college football. He had Scatterbo at like 10K, and people are wondering if they should play him or not. He ends up going for like 45. So he was the play there. And Barkley, the last few games, I mean, he's 22, 49, 36, 36. I mean, you almost have to put him at a floor of 25 in this game almost. But probably end up about the field with Saquon, I think, or probably just jam Saquon. It just depends on how much of the other spins I get to. But, yeah, we're going to see Saquon. I think we're going to see Saquon a little lower owned than we should because I think a lot of people are going to play Kamara. I think Kamara just fits a lot better, saving the salary, getting the Kamara for 1K cheaper. So I think we're going to see Saquon come in lower owned the Kamara even. So, yeah, I like Saquon here in this, but I would play Saquon over Kamara 100%. It just comes down to how much I'll be able to get on him. And then it comes down to the Carolina side. Bryce Young has looked a lot better since coming back. And, I mean, this is Philadelphia's defense is one of the better defense ever since Vic Fangio kind of got his defense in place there after the first 3 or 4 weeks. It took a little bit for him kind of get his system dialed in, but coming back from the bye week, they got everything dialed in during that bye week. That defense looks incredible. So I have a hard time really getting to many Carolina guys. I think you could play David Moore and Xavier Legette still. I mean, they're the cheap values there for Carolina. And Thielen's at 5,300. Bryce Young saved my week last week. I locked Bryce Young in like the 20 max contest, and I was overweight on him and some others. So that saved my week last week. But this game, I'm just not 100% sure. I need to kind of still think on this a little bit. But it's definitely Saquon Barkley. You got to find a way to get him in there. And then it comes down to if you want to play like Tommy Tremble, he was good last week too. He's getting those Bryce Young stacks. 3K this week, only a $200 increase.
So
could be a guy that Bryce Young.
is back this week, just for what it's
Oh,
worth.
is he?
Despite the scary neck injury, Sanders will play, which I am shocked by.
Yeah, I didn't see that he was back yet that soon, so that definitely has a wrinkle into that. But Saquon for sure, and then I'm not sure rest on Carolina yet.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one too. So, Vita Power, I 100% understand where you're coming from, right? But you have to look at it this way too, where like $9K for a guy who's clearly been the best running back in football, right? Like we were paying this for Christian McCaffrey without batting an eye last season, it felt like. And right now, like what Saquon's doing in probably the best spot in football, and this is where it comes down to, right? The best spot in football for running the ball, and he's cracked 100 yards in 6 of the last 7 games. When you are fading, though, this is where I feel the exact same way as you put. He needs 30 plus in a sense. And that's true. I mean, I think 25 would probably be the mark there for him to still be optimal and being able to fit just raw points. 25 points from one player is going to be good enough. How does he not get there? And Drew, I'm going to paint a picture for you. All right. They get down to the 2-yard line. He's got 120 rushing yards, 15 fantasy points. They don't even throw the ball. Jalen Hurts, 2 tush-push touchdowns, right? That's how he doesn't get there, right? Like, I just feel like it ultimately comes down to whether he scores from, 5 yards out or if it's Jalen Hurts getting the little tush-push there. What are you doing with Barkley? I think you're going to be very high on him as well, though, right?
Yeah, I'll be well over the field. I think to Snyder's point, the 1K difference in salary and the optimizer are going to jam in a guy that's 2 points less projected, but for $1,000 savings. I mean, that's just what they're going to do. So that's the difference in the ownership. I could see that spread even increasing. I think right now Sabres, it's about 4 or 5% difference. I could see Kamara to keep climbing tomorrow morning, and basically stays the same for Saquon. So yeah, I don't have too much interest in the game other than Saquon Barkley, and honestly. This feels a little bit like Miami last year, but everybody's so expensive. Like A.J. Brown, sure, like a 30-point team total, there's enough to go around. But now you got a 9K running back, an AK wide receiver, AK QB. There's just nothing you can do with this game besides basically jamming in the guy that's probably going to score 2 or 3 touchdowns, and that's Saquon Barkley.
Yep, and I think if he gets 1 touchdown, like you can get away with fading him, right? Like, I think like that's kind of the argument for him, right? Is that if he only scores 1 touchdown, that's fine. It is the 2 touchdown upside that is scary. It is the mega rushing prop that I assume is into the 120s almost. I'm going to go ahead and check that now. But
he scored 35 times this year too,
which is just scary. I mean, it really is, and. I have my 1-5-5-5 team in best ball has Saquon Barkley Snyder, and I'm not going to advance. Yeah, I'm not because I'm going to be part of the 40% that doesn't advance with Saquon because I picked Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud. Those are the 2 anchors, and not in a good way. They're tanking my lineup in that sense. So the rushing prop on Saquon Barkley is 110 is minus 125, which honestly,
that's crazy.
I get it. I get it. I think it is worth betting too, just because we just saw what Bucky Irving did when they actually fed him the football last week here, and this defense can't really stop the run at all. I'll be joining you guys on the Saquon wagon, but it's not going to be something I'm just going to completely force in. But I definitely will welcome one of him or Kamara in the lineups. All right, Kenneth Walker is out, so Zach Charbonnet, 4,800, good click. He is probably going to get almost all the work there in Seattle, getting a decent spot here going into an Arizona team that isn't the greatest defensively, but they're still just solid. Trey McBride is starting to get more work at 6,100 as well. And then Jackson Smith-Njigba is the number 1 wide receiver ahead of DK Metcalf. All right, Drew, I'm going to start with you here. Zach Charbonnet, what are you doing with him? I mean, it's very tough to not click a guy getting that much work in a decent offense who does get involved in the pass game a little bit. Yeah,
it's just one of those spots you just gotta take it on. If something happens, it happens. But yeah, you in this situation, this late in the season, $4,800 for a really strong, workload and more importantly a projection. Zach Charbonnet. I don't know how you avoid that, to be honest. There's no fading that, in my opinion, unless you're building one lineup and you're just hopefully 50% of the field dies off of that. But yeah, I think 50% dies because they don't play him. So yeah, Zach Charbonnet, and honestly, I don't hate anybody else from Seattle. I'm not going to be super heavy on stacking them, but like JSN, DK Metcalf, Geno Smith, all project really well. Collectively they do really well. I don't think I'm going to play the cheap guys like Noah Fant and Tyler Lockett, but like JSN, DK Metcalf, we know where the ball is going to go, and then Zach Charbonnet. So I'll probably have a few 4-man stacks, honestly, in the Millie Maker, and just see if like the value there on that offense is so big. And then you can jam in some more expensive guys, which we will get to here in a minute in the later games in the afternoon. And then for Arizona, I'll probably have some stacks of Kyler Murray with Trey McBride and James Conner, but that's going to be few and far between. And obviously those are probably going to be just run backs with James Conner on the Seattle stack. So yeah, honestly, I really like the Seattle side. I've been playing a lot of Seattle all year, as you guys know. Zach Charbonnet honestly is just like a bonus, and I'm going to keep stacking Seattle, and I'll probably have 3- and 4-man stacks sprinkled out everywhere.
Yeah, this is an interesting spot where you can definitely overstack them a little bit. I know our guy Richie Smalls mentioned it too. Geno, JSN, Metcalf, and you kind of have that little bit of upside there. You also have Charbonnet, like just to throw into that mix of like 3-man stacks where you can do a quarterback, running back, wide receiver. I'm with you, Richie Smalls. I don't like Charbonnet's game. I actually don't think he's a great running back, but we don't care about talent as much. We just care about volume. And that is something that we always have to focus on, is just pure volume. Snyder, I hate to do it, but yes, I think Charbonnet's a very tough person to avoid. And then I do want you to talk a little bit more about McBride, where is Kyler Murray finally waking up to the fact that he has an elite tight end here? Is that what we're seeing here? We're 6,100 with a massive projection as well, with SaberSim's projections. Massive.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of feel like Charbonnet is a tougher fade than maybe even Barkley or Kamara. We saw this workload from him earlier in the year. I think he played Miami and he put up 25 DK points in a similar situation than this. I had 17 points against the Patriots when I think Walker went down in that game too. So anytime he's seen at least 14 plus carries, I mean, he's going to score 17 to 25 points we've seen. If he goes for 25 at 4,800 and you don't play him, I mean, you are in some tough situations there. But
there's no late swapping the afternoon that's going to save you from
that. Yeah, for sure. So I'll probably be way overweight. I mean, you're probably realistically going to see Sharp, maybe even like in some of those single entries, like 70% and such. But that's just the play. You just put them in there and move on, try and get different. If you want to get different, I mean, I don't mind leveraging the Geno double or something, just hoping that he gets like 80 yards rushing and no touchdowns, and Geno throws for 3. So you could run the JSN double with DK if you wanted to. But yeah, I think Sharp is a really, really tough fade in this slate. And then, like you were saying, with the tight end from the Cardinals there with McBride, I think with all the other spend ups there, I think it's going to be tough for people to fit McBride, like you say, tough to fit Bowers in there. So I think we could see McBride come in lower owned. He's almost like a receiver, like I was kind of mentioning Bowers. He's definitely a guy you can have in the flex there too. He's had 27 targets the last 2 weeks. He's the guy that Murray's looking to, pretty much the only guy Murray's looking to. 3 red zone targets last week as well. So McBride is just the guy that he's looking to ever. I wish Kyler would look a little more to my guy Marvin Harrison but Marvin Harrison did find the end zone last week. The coaching staff does continue to say they want to keep trying to work Marvin Harrison in more and get him more volume and such. He saw the volume last week. It just didn't really equate to much. Only 5 catches on the 12 targets. I mean, some of those targets were pretty rough throws to him. But I think Marvin's still good for tournaments for the upside there at 6K. Should be probably like 1% owned again, like he was, or not 1%, but like 5% or less. Yeah, I think he's fine for tournaments. But yeah, I mean, you just got to click on Sharp's name and move on, I think.
So obviously the report, and I laughed when I saw this, Snyder, it was the last Sunday, is that we're going to feature Marvin Harrison. You know what? I did bet his first touchdown. I think that was the only one that I bet that ended up hitting. So I'll thank him for that. But I also hit his yards that did not hit. He did get targeted. I'll give him credit. Right? Was he featured as much as I think they were, were leading on? No. However, this is a good point too. Richie Smalls mentions it. Seattle being down a couple starting DBs. You coming off a game where you were trying to feature him. Maybe you're trying to feature him more. If you go to the Coach Speak Index, one of my favorite accounts to follow, they did sound bullish on him. They want to get him involved in the passing game in a major way, is what they said. And I think that's a good tournament play. I think that's a great click. You can do it with, where you can still play Char, but you can still play some of these Seahawks where I know the ownership on them isn't incredibly low. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, Geno Smith is a fine click at 8% and stuff, but like, you can still get very unique just in this own game where you're getting leverage off of, Charb, or you're getting leverage off of McBride a little bit. A very interesting game, with a good total. I think it's a very healthy one for DFS purposes and one that I will target a little bit. Let's move on to a living nightmare, the first game without Matt Eberflus, which rightfully can. I'll say that. Like, I've been frustrated with this Bears team all season, and I hate to call for heads. I hate to see heads roll, but Eberflus deserved to get fired there. I mean, that was just despicable what we saw on Thanksgiving. I know Caleb Williams is a little bit to blame and stuff, but this offense has been terrible since the bye week. The defense hasn't been great in its own right as well. But we get a new look, Chicago Bears, Thomas Brown taking over the interim head coaching duties. And then on the San Francisco side of the ball, this is a backfield that's going to look completely different. Christian McCaffrey, IR. Jordan Mason, IR. So that means in the city I am in right now, Louisville, we get the guy who led much of their backfield last season, a little bit. I mean, it was him splitting the work there. It's Isaac Guerendo, who was a bullish best ball pick in July and August until when Eli Mitchell got rolled out and stuff. But we haven't really heard much of it. I mean, he had a couple huge runs where he had to slide a little bit early. I think that was on primetime football as well. But he is ultimately one of the toughest fades today. I think I like him more than Charbs. What are you doing with Guerendo here? And we also got to mention no Roschon Johnson. Could DeAndre Swift be in line for goal line work if he plays? What are you doing with this one, Snyder?
Yeah, we got another spot here. Guerendo, man, he's been really good in the past game too. So another guy that I think I'd lean Sharp a little bit more, but I think it's really close. Yeah, 5,400. I think he's another guy. You just gotta, like in the optimizers and such, you're gonna get a lot of him. And you need to be. I think he's gonna probably come in somewhere around 30% owned. So he's definitely gonna be under Sharp. So I think he's better from that tournament standpoint there. He is a tough fade too. The Niners haven't been playing that good, but they're at home, short favorite against the Bears. Shanahan is really kind of their season's basically over, but I think they're going to look to feature some of these younger guys. I think Jennings is a good play as well. And I've been waiting the last few weeks. I keep playing. I played a lot of Caleb over on that Thanksgiving slate, but a lot of my Caleb doubles had either Allen and Rome or had DJ Moore and Rome. So Rome hurt some of those. Still waiting to see Rome kind of break out, but I think this is a kind of a sneaky game that could shoot out. I mean, the way Caleb's been playing, he's been chucking the ball well. So if you're looking for him to kind of come back, but Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, I mean, those have been the two go-to guys that Keenan Allen's been going to. And then I'm trying to think. Kittle, 5,800. Another guy, I mean, Kittle is priced up too. He'll probably be like way less than Brock Bowers and McBride there, but Kittle could be a really good tournament play. But this game, 44-point total. I don't really have too much on this game. I like the other games a lot better, but I mean, Isaac is going to be a really tough fade, like you mentioned. But I know Bryce won. What Bryce win, like 300K on Guerendo, like a few weeks back on that showdown slate? I think it was 300K. He won having Guerendo.
He was the direct backup to Mason, and Mason ended up getting hurt. And that's the beauty. When you run 150 lineups, you can't lose, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Guerendo's getting really tough. I think Swift is an interesting tournament play if you want to go there at 5,700. But yeah, it's just mainly Guerendo for me in this game, and maybe I try and make some Caleb stacks work. But I don't know if I can go back to Rome. I might just run a Caleb double with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, but DJ Moore does have a Q tag, it looks like.
He's going to play.
Yeah.
He looks good to play.
Let's go into it, Drew, because I look at this Bears team and I've stacked them up the last few weeks, and obviously against Detroit, it took them another half to get going. Does this coaching change? Like, do they just say, screw it, we're just going to chuck it here? I mean, this is an interesting team because this San Francisco defense is not the same that we know. All right, this defense is arguably just below average at this point.
Yeah, I don't have super strong conviction, but I do want exposure to Chicago. DJ Moore is super strong. Again, this is all just assuming they play halfway decent, but DJ Moore is super strong with Caleb Williams. Keenan Allen has the upside. He's very cheap. So this good, to Snyder's point, if this game does shoot out, we'll just call it scrappy, kind of messy football on both sides. This could be one of those, this could be the game that, 6 players, someone game stacks this and 6 players are on the winning Millie Maker. So, like I said, I don't have a ton of conviction on specific plays. Garindo, you're going to have to make a decision to click them, and how many times you want to click them is the decision. I think to Snyder's point, again, just be careful on not having too much exposure with him and Charbonnet. I just think you got to be careful with builds because everybody's going to land on the same ones. It's going to be spitting out a lot of value with those two and getting one of the 2 expensive running backs. So like I said, I do like DJ Moore quite a bit. Caleb Williams is still really cheap, and so is Keenan Allen. So I think Chicago stacks make a lot of sense. San Francisco stacks, probably not going to have too many, but I do think Juwan Jennings is a nice one-off. George Kittle is a nice one-off. So there's definitely potential here. But I do think, just again, to Snyder's point, Chicago is probably going to be the lower-owned, sneaky-ish stack that they're so cheap, man. It could definitely shoot out, and you're going to need 3 pieces of them.
Yeah, San Francisco's given up 20-plus points in their last 8 games, which is kind of wild.
Which is just incredible when you speak of San Francisco in that sense, right? We're so used to them being an elite defense, and that's obviously not the case this season. And you mentioned, is that 8 straight games, Snyder? You said 28 points.
Yeah, 8.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that just says it all right there. I mean, it does, and I honestly think, with Eberflus gone, look, we always talk about, you have the new coach bounce, you have new this, right? I think that Eberflus and Shane Waldron, I think Shane Waldron was one of the worst hires you'll ever see. The start of a rookie quarterback's career and stuff. You hire him, and then he gets canned before week 12. And Thomas Brown comes in and immediately makes him better, right? And now that Eberflus is gone, what's he going to do with this offense, Thomas Brown? Are they just going to say, screw it, focus on the offensive side of the ball? I think I'm doing it. We're gonna go with Caleb Williams stacks for the 3rd straight week. I know it didn't really count last week because it was Thanksgiving game, but you guys talked me into it. I'm gonna be very high on him, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore. Those are the 3 guys. Cole Kmet. So Kurt had a really good nugget for me. He said he can never beat man, and I still said screw you. I'm playing him anyway against Detroit, and he only had 2 catches. So I was the one who was wrong there. So I want to check the man rate on Arizona, but if they play a lot of zone, Cole Kmet could be the guy there too. And then on the Arizona, I keep saying Arizona, San Francisco man rate compared to Detroit. And then on the San Francisco side, Garendo, I might hit the lock button on him. Juwan Jennings is fine. Kittle is fine. I've already said Debo's washed. I mean, I think I could be talked into a little bit of Purdy. That would be my last one that I mentioned. All right. As you can tell, I was watching the Knicks game, and I live bet them at 10.5 and 9.5, and I saw they got a tech and almost threw that spread away. So I was kind of slightly distracted there. But we'll move on to our final game, the Bills and the Rams. So the Bills are one of the hardest teams to stack up. The first run of Sims give me absolutely 0 Bills, which I'm kind of shocked by with a 27-point team total. I did the Millie here, and I just did the top 20 teams, and I get absolutely no Bills at all. And the reason is it's very hard to stack them up, and it's very hard to know who is going to get the ball on a week-to-week basis. James Cook looked great in the snow last week, but so did the entire Bills offense against San Francisco. The Rams, however, I get a little bit of Puka, a little bit of Cup, and that's about it. Drew, what are you doing with this last game of the slate?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of Buffalo at the moment. Let's see. I mean, as of now, you kind of got to be particular with it. But the Rams stacks look really good, but unfortunately, you're going to have to probably stack the 2 popular running back. So I looked at I got Kupp, Nakua, and Stafford stacks as like my highest exposure for like this game in general. But every single one of those has both Charbonnet and Garindo. So yeah, we'll see. I don't have a lot of Buffalo to your point, so we'll see about that. I mean, Josh Allen's really not that expensive for the upside, but he hasn't been that great for fantasy. There's really not too much you can build around with him. Khalil's a little bit expensive. So yeah, I'll probably just run with these Ram stacks. And those will just kind of be my fades against Saquon Barkley and Kamara. And I'll probably just get the cheap running backs, get the Rams, and then find some other, Brock Bowers or some other expensive guys and try to get different that way. But yeah, I don't have a lot of exposure to this game overall. If it's just weird for a big total.
Yeah, and I was expecting getting to the last game, you have a 50-point total. You're like, oh man, I kind of can't wait to see what the exposure looks like, and it just kind of falls flat in its face, but for good reason, right? The Bills' defense has not been bad. Puka and Kupp make sense because look, they're easy to stack up. But we've already talked about salary being a little bit tight, and that's even with the value running backs. We haven't talked about a lot of value wide receivers, and that just kind of leads you to spending down at quarterback. Snyder, are you with him here? Are you spending low? Or are you kind of not getting much exposure to this one here?
Yeah, I've been trying to get a grip on this game the whole week. You got a total right at 50. You got 83% of the bets coming in on Buffalo, and this line from Wednesday has come from 4.5 down to 3.5, and the whole public is betting the Buffalo. So, somebody is back in this Rams side. So I've been trying to find this line stinks. Vegas and the pros are really stuck in. They're in on this Rams team hard because there's so much money coming in on the Bill side, and the line dropped the point to 3.5. So I'm trying to find a way to get some exposure to the Rams because I think the Rams are going to score 3+ touchdowns in this game. I mean, depending on the way that the Vegas is kind of pointing this game. So I think the Rams are going to score 24 points or so in this game. So I'm trying to find some ways to get some Rams into my builds. And the Rams are going to be relatively lower owned. I generally lean Puka over Kupp, but I think both of those guys are fine. I just think this game, the line on this game just really stinks. It's just one of those games where you're going to look up and see the Rams somehow win this game or something. Yeah. And the way the total is sitting in this game, I think you're going to need some Rams pieces in tournaments this week. So, I think Demarcus Robinson at 4,200 is a really good, cheap milli maker play there. He had a touchdown in the last 2 weeks. He's actually scored 6 touchdowns in the last 5 games. He had two games in a row and then won the last 2 games. So I think Demarcus Robinson is a good value piece from the Rams side of the ball. So I'll be looking to get him involved into my builds. I think that's the best way maybe to, just from a value standpoint, you can still get a good running back and such in there. Colby Parkinson for under 3K for a tight end if you want to just completely punt. It's only caught 1 pass the last 3 weeks. I don't see myself really going to Kyron, so it's going to be more so the Rams pass catchers wise. Stafford's a good price in this game if you want to stack him up there. He's under 6K still. But I'm really looking at trying to find some ways to get Rams into my build, just the way the market's setting up on this game. And I think the Rams are going to score at least 24 points in this game somehow.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. I'm just going to go ahead and I completely agree with you there. I'm kind of looking at these Ram stacks a lot more than these Bills ones because, like I said, it's incredibly tough to stack the Bills. And if you're almost playing Josh Allen, you almost don't feel confident in clicking any receiver or tight end with him. And that's just the reality of it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get us into the last bit of the show, which is getting our Millie Maker plays of the day. Under 10% is the rule. I also wanted to make the mention, Snyder. So the one thing I wanted to do was check out the top 150 teams. So I expanded out to 150. And what are the value wide receivers popping? So I'm going to give you guys time to look it up. But I also wanted you to know Kevin Austin Jr. and Calvin Austin III are the only 2 guys below 4K even popping up at the wide receiver spot, which just tells you everything you need to know about this slate. The values at the running back spot. A lot of people are going to be spending in the mid-range and probably just the mid-range in general around this wide receiver position, maybe a little bit in the studs. 1 stud running back is probably going to be very chalky. A puntish tight end. Let's go ahead and just check out the top tight end for me. You look at Brock Bowers, Hockenson, McBride, and Evan Ingram are the 4 highest owned for me. I think like the more I look, I really wanted to say a guy like Bowers for my play of the day, but I could see myself spending more for like a Juwan Johnson at 3,400 or hell, even a Chigokonkwo at 3K, where you just need to spend down in order to kind of spend up at wide receiver, which you're going to have to do here. All right, so let's see, Drew, you look very focused, very intent. You know, I haven't seen your eyes move. So that must mean that you have a very locked in play for the Millie Maker tomorrow. Who is it?
I had two, and you got talking about tight ends, so I'm going to go with David Njoku.
I like it.
That's my guy. I just like the Cleveland side all over. So he's the lowest owned of that offensive bunch. Yep,
7 to 8% is what Sabre has right now. 5,100 price tag will definitely go overlooked compared to Bowers, Hawkinson, McBride, Ingram. Those four are all projected for double-digit ownership or higher, and we know what Njoku can do. I like that call a lot. Snyder, Millie Maker play of the day.
I'm going to go with a guy that's averaging just under 23 points the last 6 games. Should be maybe around 5% owned. Devin Achane, I'm going to go with him as my Millie Maker play of the week this week. I think Achane is the guy that ships a Millie Maker for somebody this week.
I like it. I knew if I had to put money on someone who you're going to put money on, I definitely would have said Achane. You know, just basically what you were saying earlier in the show. I knew it would be him. All right, so I think like my favorite part is looking at all the ownership here. Everyone is double-digit owned, it feels. Like everyone with even a slight bit of interest in is just like double-digit ownership. I'm a chalk donkey. I understand that. But I'm going to steal your guys' thunder because you guys are the ones who talked me into this, and we're going to do it again. We're going to go Caleb Williams. You know, this might be a second time for me. Caleb Williams, my Millie Maker play of the day. Double stacks along with the Garendo run back are my favorite types of stacks this week. It took me a while, but again, for what feels like the 6 or 7 straight week, I will be stacking the late games. How much fun is that, being way behind to start your day and then watching the late games flop? I would never know. Yeah. All right, for Drew and for Snyder and for I, we thank y'all for watching. If it's not one of us perched at the top of the leaderboard of the Millie Maker tomorrow, we hope it's one of y'all. Have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.